The morning light through the windows of the Whitfield estate hit everything at just the right angle, turning the whole place into something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers caught the sun and scattered it across white marble floors. Orchids lined every hallway. The kind of orchids that needed their own climate-controlled room. I stood in front of a floor-length mirror in the bridal suite, watching a woman I barely recognized stare back at me. My dress was a fitted silk gown with delicate beading along the bodice. Simple by Whitfield standards, but it was the most expensive thing I had ever worn in my life. In 2 hours, I would be Maya Whitfield. The thought rolled through me like a wave. I couldn't tell if it was excitement or dread. Maybe both. My mom appeared behind me in the mirror. She was wearing a soft blue dress we had found together at Nordstrom Rack after 3 weekends of searching. She had tried to buy something more expensive, something she thought would fit in better, but I told her she looked beautiful in this one. And she did. Her dark hair was pinned up with a simple silver clip that had belonged to my grandmother. She reached out and adjusted my veil, her fingers trembling slightly. "You look like a queen, Anak." Her voice cracked on the last word. She only slipped into Tagalog when her emotions got too big for English. My dad stood by the door in his rented tuxedo. He was a big man, broad shoulders shaped by 30 years of working under cars at his auto repair shop in Queens. His hands were scrubbed raw for today, but there were still faint traces of engine grease in the creases of his knuckles. He had tried everything to get them clean. I had watched him the night before, sitting at the kitchen table with a brush and dish soap, scrubbing until his skin turned red. Those hands had rebuilt transmissions, had carried me on his shoulders at Coney Island, had signed the checks that put me through nursing school. Those hands were worth more than every diamond in this building. "You ready, kiddo?" He cleared his throat. "Ryan's a lucky guy." I squeezed both their hands. "Thank you. For everything. For not saying anything when Vivian corrected the pronunciation of our last name at the rehearsal dinner. For smiling through the wine tasting when she said Filipino food was a bit too rustic for the reception menu. For being here." There was a sharp knock. The wedding coordinator, a rail-thin woman named Phoebe with a Bluetooth earpiece permanently attached to her head, leaned in. "5 minutes, Mrs. Whitfield." "Oh, sorry, almost Mrs. Whitfield." She flashed a practice smile and vanished. The ceremony was held in the estate's garden. 200 chairs arranged in precise rows on a manicured lawn. White roses and gardenias everywhere. I walked down the aisle on my father's arm, feeling his steady grip anchoring me to the earth. Ryan waited at the end, tall and golden-haired in his custom suit, his smile wide and confident. Behind him, his mother Vivian sat in the front row, her posture so perfect she looked carved from marble. She wore ivory, which I had been told by 3 separate people was a bold choice for the mother of the groom. She had smiled when I mentioned it and said it was eggshell, darling, completely different. I said my vows. He said his. We kissed. The crowd erupted. Rice was thrown, though I later learned Vivian had specifically requested dried lavender instead because rice was common. We were married. The reception was in the estate's grand ballroom. A 16-piece orchestra played jazz standards. Ice sculptures flanked the entrance. The ceiling was draped in white silk. It was breathtaking and absolutely nothing I had chosen. My suggestion of a live band that played 90s R&B had been gently overruled. My request for lumpia and pancit on the appetizer menu had been rerouted into a single discreet tray labeled Asian-inspired bites, tucked in a corner I never found. As Ryan and I made our entrance to applause, I scanned the room for my parents. They had been right behind us during the photos, now I could not see them. The head table, a long rectangular showpiece at the front of the room, was already filling up. I recognized Ryan's college roommate, his business partner, Vivian's sister from Palm Beach, and several other Whitfield relatives. Place cards in elegant calligraphy marked every seat. I walked closer. I read every card. Ryan's father, Vivian, his aunt, his uncle, his godmother, his business partner and wife. My maid of honor Jess was there, looking uncomfortable in her seat next to a man discussing his yacht renovation. But there were no cards for my parents. Not a single one. My blood went cold. "Phoebe," I said, flagging down the coordinator. "Where are my parents' place cards?" For the head table. Phoebe's smile froze in place. The way a window display mannequin smiles. Oh, there was a last-minute adjustment. Mrs. Whitfield Sr. felt the configuration needed some refining. Refining. Where are they sitting? Phoebe gestured vaguely toward the back of the ballroom, past the bar, past the photo booth, to a small round table near a service corridor. Table 19. Lovely spot, actually. Very private. Close to the restrooms, which is convenient. I did not scream. I did not cry. Something inside me went perfectly, terrifyingly still. I turned and found my parents standing near the entrance, holding their cocktail napkins, looking around the room with the careful, uncertain expressions of people who know they are being watched and judged. My mother caught my eye and smiled, but it was the smile she wore at parent-teacher conferences when other parents looked at her scrubs and asked what her husband did for a living. Brave. Practiced. Small. I walked toward Ryan. He was laughing with his groomsmen near the bar, a whiskey in his hand, completely at ease in his kingdom. Ryan. We need to talk. He turned, still smiling. Hey, there's my wife. He leaned in to kiss my cheek. What's up? You look serious. The head table. Where are my parents? His smile dimmed by maybe 10%. Oh. Yeah, Mom mentioned she moved some things around. Something about balance and flow. Your parents are at a great table. 19, I think. Near the bar. Your dad will love it. Near the bar. Near the service corridor. The table where you put the guests who do not matter. Come on, Maya. He lowered his voice, his hand on my arm. It is not a big deal. They are here, they are happy. Mom just wanted to make sure the head table had the right energy. You know how she is about these things. The right energy. He must have seen something in my face because he shifted, his tone becoming the soothing, slightly patronizing murmur I had heard him use on difficult clients. Look, I will talk to her about it later. After the party. We will fix it for the next event, okay? Just let it go for tonight. People are watching. People are watching. That was always the priority. Not what was right, just what looked right. Vivian appeared beside us, gliding across the floor in her ivory gown like she owned the laws of physics. Darling, she said to Ryan, not looking at me, the Hendersons are asking about the honeymoon plans. You should go mingle. Vivian, I said. My voice was a flatline. Why are my parents at table 19? She turned to me slowly, the way you turn to look at a stain on an otherwise perfect tablecloth. Maya, sweetheart. She leaned in conspiratorially. I adore your parents. They are delightful people. But this is a Whitfield reception. The head table sets the tone for the entire evening. Your father is a wonderful man, but he spent 10 minutes at the rehearsal dinner talking to Judge Henderson about brake pads. Brake pads, Maya. At a table with a federal judge and the chairman of Mount Sinai's board, it is about harmony. I am sure your parents understand. They seem like very practical people. Practical people. That was what she called them. Not elegant, not distinguished. Practical. The way you describe a reliable appliance. I looked at Ryan. He was studying his shoes. His jaw was tight, but not from anger at his mother. From discomfort that I was making a scene. That I was disrupting the flow. Ryan, I said one more time, my parents raised me, they worked double shifts so I could go to college without debt. My father fixed cars for 40 years so I could stand in this room. They deserve to be at that table. He closed his eyes for a second. Maya, please. Not here. Not now. It is just a table. They are sitting. They are eating. Why does it matter so much? Just a table. Why does it matter? I looked across the ballroom. My father had found table 19. He was pulling out a chair for my mother with the same quiet dignity he brought to everything. He saw me watching and gave me a thumbs up and a wink that did not reach his eyes. My mother smoothed her Nordstrom rack dress and sat down, folding her hands in her lap, making herself small. She had spent her life making herself small in rooms full of people who thought they were better than her. Hospitals where doctors talked past her. PTA meetings where other mothers asked where she was really from, and now, at her only daughter's wedding, she was tucked away by the service corridor because her energy did not match. That thumbs up broke me. Not into tears, into clarity. I walked to the orchestra. I asked the conductor to stop. He looked confused, but obliged. The music trailed off into silence. 200 conversations died. Every head in the room turned toward me. "Maya," Ryan said behind me, his voice tight with panic. "What are you doing?" I stepped onto the small riser where the orchestra sat. I picked up a microphone from the singer's stand. My silk dress pulled against my legs. I did not care. The room was silent. 200 faces stared up at me, curious, expectant, smiling. I smiled back. It was not a warm smile. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I said, my voice clear and steady through the speakers. "It means so much to Ryan and me that you came to celebrate with us. Before we continue, I want to take a moment to talk about family." I looked at Vivian. She was frozen in place, her champagne glass suspended in midair. "Some of you know my parents. Some of you do not. My father, Eduardo Reyes, has owned and operated Reyes Auto Repair in Queens for almost 40 years. He can rebuild an engine from memory. He taught me to change a tire when I was 12 and to never let anyone make me feel less than what I am. My mother, Carmen Reyes, has been a hospital custodian for 25 years. She cleaned operating rooms so that surgeons could save lives. She came to this country with $200 and a ninth-grade education, and she raised a daughter who graduated magna cum laude from Columbia Nursing School." I paused. The silence was so complete I could hear the ice melting in someone's glass. Tonight, my parents were moved from the head table to table 19, next to the service corridor, because someone decided that their energy did not match the tone of this reception. Because a man who works with his hands and a woman who cleans floors are not the right look for a Whitfield event. A gasp rippled through the crowd. Ryan had gone white. Vivian's champagne glass was shaking. I looked directly at Ryan. "You told me it was just a table. You told me it did not matter. But if tables do not matter, then why did your mother care enough to change it? If seating is meaningless, why did she make sure every Whitfield had a place of honor while my parents were hidden away like something to be embarrassed about?" His mouth opened. No sound came out. I took a breath. My mom, Carmen, who had scrubbed hospital floors on Christmas Eve so other families could have their holidays. My dad, Eduardo, who had driven a cab for 3 years when the shop nearly went under so he would not have to let his 2 employees go. These are the people I come from. They are the reason I can stand in front of you in this dress, in this room, speaking in complete sentences. They are the best people I know, and they deserve better than table 19. I reached for the ring on my left hand. It slid off easily. 3 carats. Flawless. Cold. I held it up and let it catch the chandelier light. One last sparkle. I am not going to spend my life in a family that measures people by their net worth and hides the ones who do not qualify. I set the ring down on the music stand. This reception is over for me. And so is this marriage. The silence lasted 3 full seconds. Then the room exploded. I stepped off the riser and walked to my parents. My mother was crying, her hands pressed to her mouth. My father stood up slowly, his face set in stone, his eyes bright. "Mom, Dad, let us go home." My father put one arm around my mother and reached for me with the other. We walked out of the Whitfield estate through the front entrance, past the valet stand, past the ice sculptures, into the warm September night. The heavy oak doors closed behind us, muffling the chaos erupting inside. The cab ride back to Queens was 45 minutes of silence, broken only by my mother's quiet crying and my father repeating the same words over and over. "You did the right thing, Anik. You did the right thing." My apartment in Astoria had never felt so small or so safe. I stood in the kitchen at midnight, still in my wedding dress, eating leftover adobo straight from the container because I had not eaten a single thing at the reception. My phone was going nuclear. Ryan. Vivian. Unknown numbers. My nursing school friends sending shock emojis and heart emojis in equal measure. I turned the phone off and ate my mother's adobo in the dark. Jess showed up at 1 in the morning. She was still in her bridesmaid dress, carrying a bodega bag with 2 bottles of wine and a bag of hot Cheetos. She took one look at me and said, "Get out of that dress, I am ordering Thai food, and we are making a plan." By 3 in the morning, we had a strategy. Jess, who worked as a paralegal at a family law firm, had already texted her boss. No social media. No contact with Ryan or Vivian, document everything. We are getting you a lawyer, and we are getting ahead of the story before they write you as the crazy bride who had a meltdown. I am the crazy bride who had a meltdown, I said. You are the woman who refused to let her parents be treated like second-class citizens at their own daughter's wedding. There is a massive difference. Jess shoved a hot Cheeto in her mouth. Also, the video is already on TikTok. What video? Someone recorded your speech. It has 40,000 views. By morning, it had 400,000. By the following week, 2 million. The comments were a flood. Women sharing their own stories of being looked down on by in-laws. Daughters of immigrants crying because they saw their own parents in mine. A few people called me dramatic, most called me brave. I did not feel brave. I felt hollow and exhausted and strangely free. Ryan's first attempt at contact came through his lawyer. A carefully worded letter requesting a private meeting to discuss an amicable resolution and the return of certain gifts. Jess's boss, a ferocious woman named Linda Park, responded with a letter that could have cut glass. There would be no private meeting. There would be a formal process. And the gifts given to a bride were legally hers under New York law. Ryan's personal emails came next. Long, rambling, desperate. Maya, I made a mistake. I should have stood up. I was weak. I have always been weak with her, you know that. Please, can we talk? Just us, no lawyers, no mothers. I need to see you, I need to explain. I read them. I did not reply. Then came the nausea, not the stress kind, a specific, relentless, every single morning kind, a metallic taste that turned my coffee into poison, a sensitivity to smells so extreme that the hand sanitizer at work made me gag. I bought 3 tests on my way home from a 12-hour shift. I took them in my tiny bathroom with the flickering light. 3 positives. I sat on the bathroom floor for 20 minutes, my back against the cold tile, my hand on my stomach, pregnant. With Ryan Whitfield's baby. The universe had a sick sense of humor. Jess's reaction was immediate and clinical. Okay. First, OB/GYN confirmation. Second, you tell no one, especially not Ryan, until we have a legal strategy. A baby changes custody law. It changes everything. Do not let emotions drive this. Do you hear me? I heard her. But at night, alone in my apartment, my hand kept drifting to my belly. A fierce, terrifying love was already growing alongside the fear. I told my parents on a Sunday. We sat in their kitchen, the same kitchen where I had done my homework, where my dad had taught me to play chess, where my mother had rolled lumpia for every birthday party I ever had. When I said the words, my mother's face went through 5 emotions in 2 seconds and landed on a fierce, protective determination I had never seen before. Then we take care of the baby, she said. Simple as that, we take care of the baby, and we take care of you. My father was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at me with those steady, honest eyes. This child is a Reyes. Whatever happens with that boy and his family, this child will know where it comes from. And where it comes from is good. Ryan found out 6 weeks later, during mediation. I told him in a hallway outside the conference room because there was no good time, so any time would do. The joy on his face was instant and blinding. A baby. Maya, this is amazing. This is a sign. We can fix everything. We can be a family. Mom will be thrilled, a grandchild, this changes the whole situation. There it was. The tell. Not how are you feeling. Not what do you need. Mom will be thrilled. This changes the situation. I was not a person to him in that moment, I was a solution. A way to smooth things over, to rewrite the story, to give Vivian the grandchild that would restore the Whitfield image. It does not change anything, Ryan, I said. Not for us. You heard pregnant, and your first thought was how to use it to fix your life. Not mine, not the baby's, yours. And your mother's. That is exactly why this marriage is over. His face crumpled. That is not fair. I love you. I love this baby already. Then prove it. Not with words, not with gifts, not with your mother's approval. Prove it by respecting my decisions, my boundaries, and my family. Starting right now, by walking back into that room and agreeing to every single one of my lawyer's terms. No conditions, no negotiations. He stared at me for a long time. Then he walked back in and told his lawyer to accept everything. The months that followed were a blur of prenatal appointments and legal documents and building a life I never planned. Jess connected me with a nonprofit that supported single mothers in healthcare. I started volunteering, then consulting, then building a program from scratch. Resilience Nursing, we called it. A network that paired experienced nurses with new mothers navigating the system alone. Within 6 months, we had a grant, a small office in Long Island City, and a waiting list. My daughter was born on a Tuesday in March. Sophia Carmen Reyes, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, with her father's gray eyes and my mother's stubborn chin. She came into the world screaming, furious, and perfect. Ryan's visitation started slowly. 2 hours, twice a week, supervised. He showed up on time every single time, dressed down, nervous, gentle. He held Sophia like she was made of glass. He asked 100 questions. Is she too warm? Is she hungry? What does that sound mean? He never mentioned his mother. He never suggested we try again. He was just a man, trying to learn how to be a father, and I could see him trying. Vivian sent gifts. An engraved silver spoon from Tiffany. A cashmere baby blanket that cost more than my rent. A letter requesting a meeting to discuss the child's future and the family's role in it. I sent everything back. A year after Sophia was born, I was invited to speak at a healthcare leadership conference in Manhattan. The topic was resilience in the face of systemic barriers. I wore a simple black dress. My mother sat in the front row, holding Sophia on her lap. I stood at the podium and looked out at a room full of women who had fought for every inch of ground they stood on. A year and a half ago, I said, I was standing in a different room, in a different dress, in front of a very different audience. I was about to become someone else's version of acceptable. Someone else's idea of what a good wife looks like, which apparently meant hiding my parents at table 19 so they would not embarrass the right people. I paused. My mother cleaned hospital floors for 25 years so that other people's families could heal. My father fixed engines in a shop with no air conditioning so I could have air conditioning in my dorm room. They taught me that dignity is not something you inherit. It is something you practice every single day with your hands and your choices and your refusal to shrink. I looked at my mom. She was crying. Sophia was chewing on her necklace. I walked away from that ballroom because I realized that the most expensive room in the world is worthless if the people you love most are not welcome in it. I walked away because I would rather eat leftover adobo in a dark kitchen in Astoria than sit at a head table where my parents were not allowed. I leaned into the microphone. They told me it was just a table. But it was never about the table. It was about who gets to decide who belongs. And I decided that my parents belong everywhere I do. No exceptions, no negotiations. No table 19. The applause that followed was not polite. It was a roar. My mother was sobbing openly. My father, watching on a live stream back in Queens because someone had to watch the shop, texted me 3 words. Proud of you, Enoch. After the speech, as the crowd thinned, I saw Ryan near the exit. He was alone, in a simple jacket, no Whitfield polish. He looked older, quieter, like someone who had been through something that had sanded away the parts of him that used to shine too easily. That was incredible, he said. Thank you for coming. He hesitated, then spoke carefully. I am moving to Chicago next month. A friend has a startup. Small, nothing fancy. I need to build something on my own. Something that is mine, not hers. I understood. He was not running. He was finally trying to stand. Sophia will miss you. I will fly back every other weekend. I already talked to Linda about adjusting the schedule. I will not miss a single visit. He paused. You were right. About all of it. I was not ready to hear it then, but you were right. She deserved better than a father who could not stand on his own. He looked past me to where my mother sat, bouncing Sophia on her knee, singing something soft in Tagalog. He watched them for a moment with an expression I had never seen on his face before. It was not jealousy or longing, it was recognition. Of something real. Something he was only beginning to understand. Your parents, he said quietly. They are the best people I have ever met. I am sorry I did not see it sooner. He nodded once, a small, honest gesture. Then he walked away. That night, we celebrated at my parents' house. The kitchen was loud and crowded. My uncle brought lechon, Jess brought wine. My cousins fought over who got to hold Sophia. My mother made pancit, enough to feed an army. My father sat at the head of the table, the same scarred wooden table where I had eaten every important meal of my life, and he watched his family fill the room with noise and love and warmth. I sat beside him, Sophia asleep on my chest. This is the table that matters, Dad. I said it quietly, just for him. He put his rough, scarred, beautiful hand over mine. It always was, Anak. It always was. I looked around the room at the people who had carried me through the worst year of my life and into the best one. I thought about Vivian alone in her perfect house, surrounded by the wreckage of a reputation built on exclusion. I thought about Ryan on a plane to Chicago, trying to become someone worth knowing. I thought about Sophia, asleep and trusting and completely unaware of the war that had been fought over her before she even had a name. The future was not a gilded invitation to someone else's party, it was this, a kitchen in Queens, a table with no seating chart. A family that did not need to be curated because it was real. I was no longer the bride from table 19. I was Maya Reyes, and I was finally, completely, exactly where I belonged.